All right, we're on, guys. Good evening. I see familiar faces and I see new faces, and I also see some of, I'm sure, Dr. Nasha Winter's patients and maybe another healthcare practitioners. So, and I also see, I need to say, before I start, I need to say hi to Christy Spaniel. Christy, this is a treat. I love you, babe. Because Christy has an amazing story. It's like, maybe later, maybe later.
Oh,
So,
I love people's stories.
so this is amazing. You know, she's my star. She's an absolute star.
Nice.
Because she told the disease with the name C, screw you, I'm beating you. And she absolutely does it. She absolutely does it. So anyway, guys, my name is Sveta Silverman, Dr. Silverman. Unlike Dr. Winters, I am an MD, and she's an MD.
She's the fancier one.
No. I'm actually the imposter one. So if you don't know me, so I live in Alberta, Canada, which is far northern than where Dr. Winters now. She's in beautiful Mexico. And obviously you can hear my Russian accent. I practice surgical pathology. I'm in my office at home. This is my closest friend, the compatriot, microscope. So, and after we're done, I've got some slides to look at. Life goes on. So I am a conventional doctor. I'm a very proud, double-trained, Western certified physician, as well as Russian certified physician. I left Soviet Union in 89, 90 on a verge, practiced pediatric surgery for about 2.5 years, ended up in Canada, lost all my credentials, cleaned the hotels, and went back into med school.
Wow.
So I'm a proud graduate of University of Alberta Medical School, and I cognitively chose to practice surgical pathology, still in that part of medicine, conventional medicine. Life changed in 2004 when mom was diagnosed with absolutely deadly cancer. And the thing is that not only the system, conventional medicine failed her. Actually, conventional medicine failed me. And I failed to help my mom. So, and I love conventional medicine, don't get me wrong. I'm a very proud breast pathologist specializing in breast cancer and, highly trained, highly certified consultant. But in 2004, life was shaken, and I was knocking on the wall, and I started looking into other kinds of medicine. Being double trained, Canadian board certified, I had no idea that other medicine exists. I had no idea that I knew that there is alternative something, but who are they? Why are they called doctors? Like, what's wrong with that? They don't go to med school. So I started learning foods. From foods, it turned into exercise. From exercise, it turned into mind. From mind, it turned into supplementation. And getting more and more and more, I've discovered natural medicine, naturopathic medicine. That's how I met incredible Dr. Winters. I met Dr. Winters probably, well over a year ago, probably like going on 2 years. And we just collided. We collided, and the energy happened, and it's like, I can't get enough of you. You get that thing. It's like, I want to be your friend. Because the energy that's coming from you is so awesome. And those days, I had no idea who I actually bumped into. And I collided with Dr. Winters in regards to yoga. And
remember our brain enema. We talked about the brain. We met over a conversation around having a brain enema.
Brain.
That's how it started. That's where the love story started.
Exactly. exactly. We ended up at the Naturopathic Oncology annual meeting, which both of us are going to miss because it's going to happen in the next couple of days. However, I have my insider there, so I'll get the notes. And then we're going to meet again in April at the Environmental Toxicity Symposium. So looking forward to this, and it's Scottsdale. And so bottom line is, I didn't know who Dr. Winters was that day, but we started chatting health and stuff. And it's like, people like to talk, I don't know, shopping. People like to talk something. And I couldn't get enough of her talking natural medicine. We started calling each other, or maybe I started calling her. and then I have discovered Dr. Nasha Winters. Now, the thing is, if I start listing her credentials, we probably will end up at 8 p.m. Well, the thing is, she's got titles galore. She's obviously a fellow of a naturopathic oncology. Is it society or the board?
The fellowship.
Fellowship, yeah. She's a diplomat of OM. That's, I could not find the translation.
Oriental medicine.
Oriental medicine. But the thing is what's about Nasha? Number one about Nasha is her heart. I think maybe that's why we resonated. That kindness, that heart, that desire to help, and that's what she's all about. She's practicing naturopathic medicine for over 25 years, and she, I believe I don't know whether she still owns Optimal Terrain, because now she's shifting gears towards virtual medicine, practicing naturopathic medicine, through the digital age and computers. Obviously, she's a massive educator. She's an author, and she is co-author of one of the amazing books that I have read, and I'm going to misquote it as, I always call it cancer as a metabolic disease. It's obviously, the metabolic approach to cancer. It's an amazing book. It's an extremely complicated book.
I know, it's not light. I'm sorry.
It's not a light book, but that's an amazing book. That's a whole thing, guys. We need to understand that cancer is a metabolic disease.
Yeah.
It is not. Is it a genetic disease? Absolutely. But the number of genetic, meaning that, exactly, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I've got both. I've got the hard copy and I've got my Kindle copy. I'm all set.
You're on it.
So the thing is, do we have genetic cancers? Absolutely. We do have BRCA cancers. Well, obviously, I'm prone BRCA1 and BRCA2 hereditary cancers that afflict females predominantly, some males with breast cancers and ovarian cancers. Obviously, let's say we have some syndromic cancers, but they're in the minority of cases. The majority of cases are what is called environmental cancers, aka metabolic cancers or epigenetic cancers. And I think that's what we need to teach and preach more and more and more. Not only Dr. Winters is absolutely versed in managing, treating cancers, but she is a master of Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. She treats people with HIV/AIDS. She treats Aboriginal people. She treats pediatric population. I mean, what doesn't she treat? It seems like she treats everything. Maybe that's why she's so incredibly, incredibly busy. I believe you cannot book her till probably May right now, and it's on the computer, this kind of things. And the thing about Dr. Winters, maybe she will share, she had her personal journey in 1991, and I'm sure that changed her life. So before further ado, and before we start embarking on different stories and stuff, Dr. Winters, please welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please share you with us.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, Sveta, I can't even begin to thank you for an incredibly rich and juicy and gracious introduction. So thank you for that. And we met at a conference where we were both kind of wandering around aimlessly in the hallway after a little bit saturation of information overload. And we're literally, exactly, we just need a brain enema and then we can learn more. And that's where we just got to giggling and connecting, and the rest is history. So with that, one of the things that struck me about meeting you, Sveta, is that you and I see, you are the person who had started your career looking down at the cellular level, down at the pathology. And my favorite course in medical school was pathology. I really enjoyed it. I had the state pathologist of Arizona was my teacher. His father is who came up with the drug cyclophosphamide. So I came from a very good lineage. Dr. Peter Burkholder was my pathology teacher, and a very strict, he wanted us to understand this, because if we could understand things down at that cellular biochemical level, we could figure out basically anything in medicine.
Amen.
And so that's where we connected on so many levels. So when you talked about my diverse history, I have a lot of diverse interests in to me, medicine and healing. It doesn't matter if it's a diagnosis of HIV or cardiovascular disease or Alzheimer's or ADD, any of these diseases to me come down to that cellular level, down to a mitochondrial metabolic disorder. And our culture and our health care system, I almost hate to call it that because it's sort of the furthest thing from the truth of healthcare. It's more of a disease-based model. We keep adding to the damage of our chronic illness patterns. So, to throw out a few kind of scary stats with your listeners, just in the United States alone, this is what I can speak to. I can't speak to Canada. I can't speak to other places, but I can speak to the US, that 1 in 2 men and 1 in 2.4 women are expected to have cancer in their lifetime. In the United States alone, we lose 1,600 people a day to cancer. Worldwide, over 20,000 people a day. This is a disease process, which is a manageable disease process, no different than diabetes or cardiovascular disease, but we still treat it like it's somehow an external invader that's taken over. And that's where I love that you and I really clicked on understanding that if we know what goes into our mitochondria, what goes into the bucket of who we are, then we can also take those things out, clean it up, clean up the fish tank, if you will, and refurbish it with something newer and cleaner. And as a pathologist, you can watch in real time healthy cells next door to unhealthy cells in a petri dish or in a tissue sample. So you're seeing it down to that level that we can only imagine. So when you're describing a mitochondrial metabolic disease, I'm curious how you describe it to a patient who does not get your very unique perspective of how you physically see it to that beautiful friend of yours on the desk next to you.
You said it. I think that I'm in such elite situation, such distinguished situation, because I do see cells.
Yeah.
And not only as a pathologist, I see cells, I try to look into what the cells are.
Yeah.
What is the cellular machinery? And from, and that's what that's my understanding now in the philosophy is every cell, when we're born, it's a well-oiled, perfect machine. It's a well-oiled machine with multitude of functions, and it's like a honeycomb. It's like a bee factory, and every bee knows what to do. When we're born, the bees are not confused. So bee A goes and starts making protein, and BB goes and starts making this, and BC goes and breaks the lipids, and these kind of things. And all of these bees are working in synergy. What happens is we become obliviously optimistic when we get old, and we think that we're invisible and invincible.
Right.
Not invisible, invincible. Yeah, we're so visible. Yeah, Russian. We're so visible. But what happens is whatever we eat, what we think is great, And we stop working on our meditation, on our mind, and we stop working on our happiness. And we'll stop, okay, I know that I have to exercise. Okay, next week, I'm just too tired.
Yeah.
But that goes on and on and on and on and on. And then we don't live in a blue zone, meaning that even with those negative things, then we're applying whatever's surrounding us.
Totally.
Our work that I'm lucky, I love, but how many of us absolutely call it LSDJ, life sucking day job, don't like doing. How many of us are living in financial stress, in emotional stress, and all of this, and we don't take care of it. So me as a pathologist, I did a study. I wanted to see the progression of normal cells to cancer. And I do the poor man's research. I don't have the ability to do high-end molecular. I don't. So I did an electron microscopy study from normal cells to a certain variety of low-grade breast cancer.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I saw the progression, how the cells grow from normal to cancers that are contained, which is called in situ, contained cancer or enveloped cancers. And from those envelopes, when we still don't take care of it's also about environment. It's all about environment. It's also about cancerous environment, the microenvironment of the cancer. And that toxic microenvironment melts that envelope. And here's the progression into what is called invasive carcinoma. Yeah. So, and exactly what you said, as a conventional physicians, we treat the disease. We never individualize the patient. We never individualize the process. And, finally, now we're starting to think of epigenicity. And we start to think of the environmental etiology or origin of those cancers.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because you started out the conversation saying, yes, there is some concepts of genetics playing a role in this, but even the few that you listed off, like BRCA and the ATM mutation and Lynch syndrome and some of these others, those are actually methylation issues. And so it's interesting because we kind of place them like there are like the stuck in stone way to be with a mutation of this, but you can also create epigenetic overexpression of those as well.
Nasha, let me interrupt you just for a second. Yeah. Please elaborate to normal people.
Nobody's normal here. I'm hoping that's not the case.
What methylation, in lame words, what actually methylation means? Because it's an awesome concept.
Yeah. Well, basically, I'm going to do this very, very layperson, in that we have we've got certain pathways in our body that make cofactors to repair DNA and to break down DNA that's damaged. So that's sort of like the sorting system. I grew up in Kansas. I'm a Kansas girl, and there was always that separating the wheat from the chaff, and that concept of separating out kind of the broken shell from the whole kernel. That's sort of what our body is doing with methylation all of the time. It's sort of constantly sifting and getting rid of what is broken and repairing what was just slightly damaged and maintaining the health and vitality of what should be healthy and vital to do the roles, as you so eloquently pointed out with the hive kind of honeycomb idea, because that's a very good analogy to use, that we have all of these different things that have different roles, and they know what their jobs are to be until the message gets jammed. And that message can get jammed from lack of certain nutrients, such as a parent who is malnourished at the early phase of embryologic development of their baby, or an exposure, for instance, of a child whose father was in Vietnam and exposed to extreme methylation chemicals that created damaged sperm, that created future generations of damaged issues. We also use our methylation to detoxify and move things through. So it moves into the way we run things through our liver enzyme pathways to clean out the house, basically. So today, it's no longer a matter of, are you, do you have some toxicity? It's a matter of how much and what deck of cards were you dealt in this lifetime to deal with those toxicants. So an example I've used, and if you've heard me on other podcasts, my husband loves the smell of diesel. Loves it. He wants a diesel fueled truck. And I'm like, I know I would die just having the thing idling in my driveway every day, because the smell of it gives me immediate nausea, immediate headache. I do not have, literally, I'm missing several glutathione SNPs that are just gone. They don't even exist, right? They're completely deleted in me. Those populations of people are people that have really high incidence of certain liver cancers, pancreatic cancers, breast cancers, other cancers in general. So I know I have to work much harder to take out the garbage in myself on a regular basis, simply because I was not given the tools to do so internally. That's what I love that we can learn today. When we talk about precise precision medicine, we can actually know exactly what deck of cards we were dealt and know how to play them at their best. Because sometimes we're dealt a pretty crummy hand.
Yeah, totally. Incredible. That concept is incredible. And
Yeah.
you know what Dr. Nasha was talking about this methylation, and it's called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphism. Never mind, forget about it. But what she was talking about, you can deal with this little SNPs, so the breaks with foods.
Yeah. And
not
thoughts.
drugs.
And movement and cleaning up your environment and everything you put on in and around you.
It's basically you're tweaking with normal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's a bit cliche now to talk about biohacking, but that's ultimately like the people we've been learning more about in medicine. And I'll just say it, and I'm not going to be very popular saying this, but I've learned more about how to care for my body in the last 10 years from people from the tech industry than I ever learned from a doctor. I mean, and I'm seeing a few of you nodding your head in this, because these are people who have curiosity, right? And they're like, broken system. They think in systems, a lot of folks in that tech world. So therefore, they understand the body as a system as well. And they're like, well, if I can rearrange this data chip or this metric, could I not have a better outcome? And these were the people who went before us. And I always joke that I was sort of the ultimate biohacker 27 years ago, because there wasn't Dr. Google, there wasn't Dave Asprey, there wasn't, there was none of these things. I had to kind of keep trying something on for size and seeing how it fit. A lot of mistakes along the way. And that's how we've kind of figured this out. And now we're collectively finding each other and coming together to realize that we have made a lot of changes on our planet in a very short period of time. And it is hard for all of us to adapt to, but some of us are a little more challenging than others. So when I kind of think about breaking this down to the pathologic, cellular disrupted, cellular communication breakdown level, mitochondria level, people say, well, why now more than ever? Three simple things, three very, very simple things. The large addition of sugar to our diets in a very short period of time. That's, we're supposed to be a hybrid engine. We're supposed to be able to effectively and efficiently burn sugar or fat, carbohydrates or fat as needed. We were never accessing food 24/7 every day of the year, every season of the year, and especially the macronutrients. So to give you an example, before 1850, we were all, in essence, low carb. It wasn't a fad, wasn't a thing. Before we started milling sugar and flour, about 30% of our calories came from carbohydrates. And we used those carbohydrates to help us be resourceful and everything else, to find fuel, to find water, to make babies, to make shelter, all of that thing. We used that carbohydrate that we took in even more effectively. Today, we average about 70 to 80% of our diet is carbohydrate, and we have an energy excess. So we have really filled all of our gas tanks with sugar. And yeah, you can drive a car down the road a little bit with sugar in the gas tank, but if you've ever experienced that, it just kind of sputters and peters out over time. That's what it does to us. Like, for instance, if any of you are cooks or chefs, when you brown sugar, what happens? That's an oxidizing reaction. It's an oxidizing biochemistry. So when you take in a lot of sugar in a heated thermogenic system, because we're all, kind of lukewarm, in our body temperature, we are in essence browning ourselves. So we're increasing oxidative stress, and we're increasing the rusting and the browning and the aging process in our cells simply by switching over to burning sugar all the darn time. And then our bodies have lost the wisdom of even burning fat. And if we try, I'd love to see a hand, how many of you here find it difficult to even skip a few hours between meals? Like maybe feel a little wobbly or hangry or a little lightheaded. Now maybe this group I'm preaching to a choir a little bit, so you're probably all like little hybrid engines, but remember a time when you weren't. I remember a time not too long ago when I'd have to eat every 2 to 3 hours to feel like a normal human being and not kill someone. Okay, that was me being metabolically inflexible. I couldn't go to dinner. I couldn't go to bed without a snack right before bed. And I had to eat the second I got up, or I was wobbly. Those are all signs and symptoms of you not being that dual engine you were meant to be. So that was one of the big changes to our bodies since, when you look at the map of human time, 1850 wasn't that long ago. So, 150 years or so, we've really changed things up. Number two, the massive changing in our farming and agricultural and ranching, and the way we've treated our planet and our animals and our food source. Since the Industrial Food Revolution, we have factoryized all of our food, including animal protein, vegetables. Now we're even trying to grow protein in labs and whatnot. It's kind of Frankenstein, and so the food today. Yeah, the food of today is not the food of our near ancestors, and I've got the sticker on my fridge that says eat organic food, or as your grandparents called it, food, and we have to even qualify. And how difficult is it to even find quality food? And I don't, I understand. I mean, Sveta and I've talked about this. I was a vegetarian for a long time and even vegan for a period. And I'm not in a disagreement with your choices, but man almighty, it makes you compelled to stay vegetarian when you look at the food, how we're treating and raising animals in completely inhumane and disgusting environments that are not being fed anywhere near their natural diet. You're eating a Superfund site when you eat a factory farmed creature. And that's really, no matter what your belief system is, that's just the reality of what we've done to just our food source. And then the other side of that discussion around food is today, you cannot even find rainwater that does not, is not polluted with glyphosate, with Roundup. And unfortunately, the majority of the planet lives on pulses, beans and rice, and the two food crops that sequester this poisonous endocrine disrupting known carcinogen the most are, unfortunately, the foods that have nourished us for millennia in many cultures. And now that same food that was our nourishment is now our poison. So we're watching places like India that's had a huge diet of pulses and legumes and beans and rice as their mainstay are dying now just as rapidly, if not faster, than us in the West because of what we're doing to the foods. And then we're feeding those animals those polluted foods. I mean, we're kind of screwed. You got to really know where your food comes from. You got to know where it comes from, and you got to start to get your hands back into the soil, and you've got to start mitigating it yourself. And then the third final piece you already talked about, this is where Sveta and I started our love affair, was at an environmental conference, is because this is where 60,000 new chemicals with less than 200 of them well tested since the 1960s. It is no longer a matter of if, as I said, it's how much and how it's affecting your body, of how much toxic exposure. And we're just starting to test and understand of how those toxicants accumulate and affect each other. So maybe by themselves they're not so bad, but when you put them all in the collective soup, this is why we're seeing greater disease processes, like I said before, with the horrible statistics. But the reality is that this is why we see higher rates of autism, higher rates of osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer. These are the causes of our damaged mitochondria. And so those are the three biggies that we just hit on right then and there when people want to say, well, why? We've had these things affecting us, but why more now than ever? We put a lot in our mitochondrial bucket and we need to help it out.
This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. People are already texting how awesome this information
Oh gosh, oh that's good, because they're probably like,
I knew that. But the thing is, what you just said, I keep asking myself a question: why there is an increased cancer rate in India?
oh, a place that had lowest.
Considering that, they're vegetarians, they are so, per se, they're into Ayurveda or something like that, and still the cancer rate is climbing up in India. And it makes absolutely total sense because of the rice production and stuff.
Yeah, and the ripening agents. I mean, Monsanto pretty much owns all of the crops in India now. And people like Vandana Shiva, if you don't know this amazing woman and follow her work, she's had people try to take her life out so many times from the industry, but this woman is the voice of the farmers in India. She is the ultimate seed collector and trying to get back to the original food systems that nourished us. But she is up against big money, big industry, big pharma, big ag, and it is not a gentle place. And one of the things I'd love for your listeners to follow, if they don't already, check out the organization ACRES. All one word, all capitals, ACRES. These guys have been for almost 65 years fighting the industrial food revolution and sprouting up and re-educating our farmers and ranchers for the future generations to help clean up the hot mess that their grandparents and great-grandparents were seduced by the industry to make lives easier. We went this way thinking we were serving humanity, not causing it harm. But we now have known for a good 20, 25, maybe even 30 years that we took a very wrong turn. And now the money factories are too committed to keeping it status quo than changing it. And so that's why when you see the massive rates of suicide in farmers and ranchers in India, this is Vandana's work, is to help change this, because their crops get taken. If there's a single contamination from Roundup, their crops get sequestered by Monsanto because of laws making them own the patent on that seed, on the genetics of that. So they have their entire life work taken away in a heartbeat. And yet then they're the same people telling us that their crops can't possibly affect the other crops. 2 miles of air will glyphosate travel. 2 miles of soil will glyphosate travel. It can stay in clay-rich soil up to 20 years. People like Dr. Huber from Purdue University, people like Stephanie Senna from MIT, these are the researchers and whistleblowers that are helping us understand that we got ourselves in a pickle and it's up to us to get ourselves out of it. And so I get quite passionate because when people start to throw around food dogma, I'm like, it's all poison, people. It's all a hot mess.
But you have to
start from scratch.
But what you said is so important. Well, number one, I'm a caramel. So as all of you, because we're cooking sugar, so we're turning into caramel.
That is a great analogy.
Caramel. So but the thing is, now, I'm a caramel. So now let's get serious. But you know what you said. So the utmost important thing is basically, and that's, I'm an NRF2 addict. I'm an NRF2 crazy, because the number one thing that we need to do with our cells is to cleanse the cells. We need to clean the cells. We need to clean the cellular milieu. We need to clean the cell from all that garbage and cellular garbage and oxidative stress. And this is the most important thing. We have
to help the mitochondria breathe again. We have to help them come back on track.
You got it, because considering that the thing is, cell per se is protected. There is quite a rigid, not a rigid, but quite a thick cellular membrane, cellular envelope. Yeah. Well, mitochondria is practically naked.
Yeah.
So the mitochondria, and we'll get into this, mitochondria contains 2 membranes. One is an outer membrane, one is an inner membrane, and they are tiny, they're scrawny, they're fragile, they're thin. They're even incomparable to the membrane of the nucleus. Our nucleus is protected. Our genes are protected. Our cell is, mitochondria is like, no, it's a canary in a coal mine. Mm-hmm. So, if you do not clean the bucket of garbage in the cells, it is inadvertently going to damage mitochondria. It's damaging mitochondria.
Absolutely. And, I like to take it, when people don't understand about mitochondria, think of it this way. These are just little, they're like little solar panels within each of our cells, and they collect all their nutrients. They depend 100% of the input we give them. So air, sun, water, soil, all of that. So that's even our light exposure, whether it's blue light or natural light, whether it's screen time or, a kiss of the sun, whether it's good quality water or polluted water. That is what our mitochondria are up against. They depend on us to be the steward of them, to take care of them. They originated from bacteria. That's what's really amazing. They're over 170,000 years old, and they've been passed down since the original mother. So I just think that's a really crazy, interesting thing. And there are some studies that show that they take up between 10 to 20% of our body weight. That is incredible to me. And that when the mitochondria, our aging is based on mitochondrial health. And it's also based in the cancer world, which is where I hang out. If you have faulty mitochondria, you do not apoptose, meaning you do not have programmed cell death. If your mitochondria are broken, that is the organelle in charge of telling your cells to die. You could throw all the dang chemotherapy and radiation and surgery at it as you want, but if those mitochondria aren't working, those drugs just fall on deaf ears. And the final thing that I think is a big point to make people understand why these little buggers are so important is that each and every cell in our body, outside of the red blood cells, contain hundreds, if not thousands, of mitochondria. And the ones that have the richest amount of mitochondria would be our brain, our eyeballs, our liver, and our heart, and our muscles. And think about all the diseases we just talked about that are related to mitochondrial damage, mitochondrial insufficiency. And look at the world around us and how we damage our brain, our eyes, our liver, our heart on a pretty regular basis with so many things. I just wanted your listeners to just get a sense of the wonder, because all we all learned about the mitochondria was our 5th grade biology class, where we had a cute little picture of the mighty mitochondria and it makes ATP, and it was left at that. It does so much more than that.
This is amazing. You just said, it's incredible, because you just said that the mitochondria is a cellular police. Absolutely.
That's a good way of putting it.
It is a cellular police under one condition. When it's a normal mitochondria.
Exactly.
When it's a confused mitochondria, as you know, that mitochondria under oxidative stress, or as we in medical field call it, dysfunctional mitochondria. And every cell will have confused mitochondria. Don't get me wrong. It's like, we don't have the perfect world. We don't have the perfect cell. So every cell will have a confused mitochondria, but when the number of normal mitochondria exceeds the number of confused, that's what Dr. Winter said. That's when the cell recognizes and the mitochondria recognizes something went wrong with me. Yeah. Something is not right with me. I actually don't belong. Yeah. So the mitochondria gives the signal. You're going to die. Okay, boo. Pulls the trigger and the cell disintegrates. And that's how we protect ourselves from cancers. Yeah. We have a perfect mechanism from protecting ourselves from mutated, from a wonky, from a confused cells. Yes. That is the function of mitochondria. But guess what? Another function of mitochondria is the control tower.
Good point.
Mitochondria is that organelle that tells the nucleus what to do, with whom to do, and how long.
Exactly.
Meaning that, so that's the thing. So you do not want confused mitochondria.
No. We got enough confusion in here already. And
and another thing is not only, but and as Dr. Winter said, we all learned it. Absolutely. I learned it in my high school as well as in the university, or both of them, that it gives us energy. Well, it does. But guess what? You need to understand one thing, that healthy mitochondria will give you that much energy.
Right.
But unhealthy mitochondria, dysfunctional mitochondria, will give you that much energy. Or no energy at all, very little. And we also need to understand, for example, in cancer, every cancer has bad mitochondria. Every cancer has what is called cancerous mitochondria. And that mitochondria is, that mitochondria operates by quantity, but not by quality.
Exactly.
Because cancer cells, they want to survive. They want to live. So they want their oxygen. So their teeny, scrawny mitochondria don't utilize oxygen much. So what happens is numbers happen. So we need to kill those numbers of that tumorous mitochondria, eliminating those cells from any supply of oxygen. And that is going to kill the cell. The cell is going to suffocate. The cell is going to starve. And we need to find the real ways how to deal with this. And I'm sure Dr. Winters is the one who actually has, no, seriously, who has the answers, because, let's say, from conventional perspective, you already mentioned that we go by our algorithmic approach of chemoradiation therapy.
Right. Yeah.
We just go by free radicals. We don't go, as of now, we started to think targeted therapy. Finally, we're starting to do targeted therapy. It's just embryonal stages.
Yeah, we're in such a young stage of this. And even with our targeted therapies and our immune therapies, we're in such infancy around that we're applying them, frankly, too little too late in the majority of the populations where we're using them. And so if we're going to be doing these therapies, you have to have an intact system. You have to actually still have some pretty good functioning mitochondria for those therapies to take effect. Just to give examples to your listeners, radiation is desensitized in the face of elevated insulin and glucose. So, or I should say, cancer cells to radiation are desensitized. So if you have elevated insulin, if you have elevated insulin growth factor, if you have elevated hemoglobin A1C, so if you're caramelized, as we talked about a moment ago, and you're doing radiation, I'm not against radiation, but I'm certainly, if I'm going to use it, I want it to act like a target. And if I've now turned off the response in those cells to that therapy, and in fact increase the rate of oxidative stress to the healthy cells and resistance to the cancer cells simply by not having the rest of my terrain tuned up to have a better outcome with radiation, then I've just wasted a lot of time, energy, money, and really toxic therapies that are known to cause extra cancers by doing that route.
Develop resistance.
And this is what we try to tell you, we are not in the integrative oncology world. This is not an either or. I am not a person who bashes in conventional standard of care medicine, but I certainly don't think it's being used at its best possible way. I think it's actually.
Why we have you. That's exactly why we have you as the naturopathic oncologist. Who is adjusting, or who is combining very cognitively, very intelligently, very knowledgeably, combining the conventional therapy with foods, with herbs and roots, supplementation in different modalities.
And that's the thing is there's a timing. There's a layering effect. I mean, I still see people who mismanage and misappropriate and mislayer their all alternative therapies, right? Just as poorly as if they only did standard of care therapy. Both ends of the spectrum exist. I've seen people completely throw out the baby of the bathwater of doing any standard of care where they probably could have used a little cytoreduction, especially if it was timed appropriately and supported. Just like there's been people who've done standard of care that certainly could have kept their 70% recurrence rate, which is the going statistic from the American Cancer Society, that those who've had cancer and gone through cancer treatment have a 70% chance of recurrence. Those numbers are not okay by me. So
exactly.
That's why we can bring on therapies like cleaning up the terrain, cleaning up the mitochondria, making them happy and quality and quantity again, so that you can lower your recurrence rate drastically. And so here's a couple. I'm going to do two quick kind of slides really quick so that your listeners can have a sense of their own mitochondrial health without spending the money on a test. You can there are tests out there for mitochondrial health, telomere age, things like that, but you're going to be spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And we're still not sure if they're up to snuff to be of any help. Okay. We just sort of assume everyone's mitochondria are a little sad right now. But here's early warning signs of mitochondrial damage. And I'll go through the list slow. When you become increasingly a night owl, and I'm saying that as it's getting really dark and I'm usually in bed in 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm like, oh, my mitochondria will suffer from that. But it's, I know how to balance that out. Number two, when you start to use the crutch of caffeine, sugar, and carbs just to get through the day. Number three, you talked about this right in the beginning, and I love that you said this, Sveta, was the loss of joy. Okay. Number four, the loss of stamina. So that same walk around the block or that same time in the gym, maybe you're not bouncing back as quickly. That's probably a clue. Subtle mood swings. Okay. Feeling really a little bit more volatile than usual. Feeling mildly stressed. Joint and muscle stiffness and achiness. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, this concept of spleen qi deficiency patterning. So maybe a puffy tongue, maybe a little bit poor digestion. You're just a little, maybe not as sparking as normal. Those are considered early warning signs of mitochondrial damage. The other big one, the number one sign of mitochondrial damage is fatigue. And then there's the fatigue of like working really hard and really earning your fatigue. But most of the people who come to a doctor, 80% of patients who come to doctors complain of fatigue. So right there, 80% of patients are frankly dealing with an early warning sign of mitochondrial damage. So let me give you the late sign, mitochondrial damage. And this is where we start to look for things like cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Okay, osteoporosis, other degenerative disease processes, mental and physical fatigue that's not restored with rest. That's a biggie. We know, things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. Those are ultimate mitochondrial diseases. Pain of any kind that wasn't like, oh, I hit my arm against, the wall, or I just had surgery, but pain kind of out of nowhere. Does this sound like some fibromyalgic kind of patterns? Slow recovery from exertion. So when I have patients tell me that it takes them a week to recover from a workout. Foggy brain, dizzy spells, depression or anxiety, loss of libido, especially when you've had a normally healthy, vibrant one. Cold and or heat intolerance, variable blurred vision, light intolerance, noise intolerance, shortness of breath, and susceptibility to infections. When you look at this, when you think about the pattern of this, when I see somebody in Chinese medicine, this is when we talk about exhaustion of qi, blood, yin and yang. Okay, it's like all the resources are depleted. The bucket is empty. And so when we don't have our resources, we don't grow good, healthy skin, hair, nails. We don't want to make love. We don't want to sleep in normal hours. Everything is thrown off. Our rhythm is off. So mitochondria also set our circadian rhythm and our circadian pattern. And living on the planet today, it's like the antithesis of health to a poor little circadian rhythm within the mitochondria, because we're all living under such abnormally unnatural circumstances. And so when you see patterns like this isn't to terrify your audience, but it's for people to just have that awareness. Because do you know what everyone says to me? Because Sveta, you get to see their tissue under a scope, but I get to see the real person in front of me. They always say things like, I was healthy until I got cancer. Okay. And when I really do a thorough exploration of their medical symptoms and histories, these are rather subtle symptoms that people don't even realize. It's like being the lobster put into a cold pot and heated up until it's boiling. We don't even notice it anymore. So I wanted your folks to hear that and start to realize, wow, I need to look inside a little bit deeper. I need to take a little more active, self-responsibility and really exploring what's in my bucket and cleaning things out and tuning things up. Blah. How's everybody doing there? A few people are like,
so amazing. It's like, you see there's like seven chat. These are not questions, these are comments. Amazing, 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 amazing.
Oh,
This is like, I cannot afford the Brainema today. I cannot afford Brainema. This is all contained. This is all staying here.
No Brainemas on this one.
No Brainema on this room. No Brainema on this. This is so incredible. It's like, I cannot even express my gratitude. How amazing. And this hour flew by like 60 seconds.
I know. And that's the thing is I want to leave, because I don't want to leave everyone on I'm going to go jump off a cliff now, because that's sometimes what we feel like when we look at what we're faced. And so that's the place where I know you have tools in your toolbox. I have tools in mine.
Everyone.
Right. Everyone. And the thing is, the fastest, cheapest, easiest one is autophagy, which is giving your body a rest from food sometimes. And that can be as little as 13 hours a day, thanks to the MD Anderson study that showed that women who've had a history of breast cancer, they looked at 44,000 women. I love this. People are commenting here, but 44,000 women looked at. The women who ate, who had a fast of 13 hours or more a day, had a 70% decrease recurrence rate compared to the people who ate within that, in a wider window. So what that study is showing us, they didn't even ask them what they were eating. The timing of their meals was important, and having enough of a break to sweep out the garbage at least once a day is that concept. When you talked about it earlier, the gobbling down of the broken cells, that's autophagy. And when we do autophagy, when we take out the garbage, we create something called mitogenesis, meaning we take out, it's like, here's me. I shop at thrift stores, okay? I'm not allowed to buy anything from a thrift store unless I take two things out of the closet. So that's my little rule of thumb. I take two things out to put one thing in. That's how I treat my body with regards to cancer prevention. It's like my own autophagy before I create new mitogenesis. So, that's my weird little pearl of that. But there are a million things, and I know you're passionate with the NERF2 and support there to work on all of those things, upregulate mitophagy and autophagy, or mitophagy, autophagy, and mitogenesis.
That's right, mitogenesis and mitochondrial biogenesis, production, the new mitochondria. But again, that's a whole thing. So if we can do that intermittent fasting, and I know that you're a massive proponent of an intermittent fasting, and then we can go exercise, same thing, we're going to turn on our mitogenesis or mitochondrial biogenesis. And, the thing is, whatever you just said, it all makes such a perfect sense.
Good.
It's
very intuitive, but we've gotten so used to sort of thinking it has to be more complex than that. It's just think about it. Yeah, we just have, and what do we keep? We're in information overload, overfed, undernourished, overstimulated with all the things in our world around us, over-medicated. We need a break. I think all of us would just need to go on 2 weeks off the grid, get out in nature for 2 weeks, spend 3 to 5 days even not eating, if you can do that while you're out there, get back in the rhythm of nature. We've been able to show in studies that 2 weeks off the grid can reset your circadian rhythm and your mitochondrial, function and flow. How many of you just get to take an entire day where you're off the EMF graph, grid? It's hard to do, right? It's hard to do. And so if you have an opportunity to just go out even and be in nature, 1 hour smelling the resins of the forest, will enhance your natural killer cells for up to 7 hours. So I tell people, like, think about it. An hour once or twice a day out in nature can actually stimulate your immune system to do its job. So these are these simple, free things that we have to even build into our daily routine now because we've gotten so far. The average American spends less than 15 minutes outside every day. And I love this. The other medicine is your pets, as your cat, like on cue, comes into the screen, and my crazy 2 dogs and cat. Like, these are other things that help us reconnect with ourselves and breathe. Our heart rate goes down, our blood pressure comes down, our oxytocin starts to flow. It's even conversations like this that our oxytocin is flowing and connecting us in a pretty profound way from all corners of the world and the country. And so my hope is that as much as we kind of talked about the bad news in this period of time together, there is always something that can be done. And I just wanted to make sure we leave it on a more positive note, because I don't want everyone ruminating on the scary stuff tonight. I want them thinking about how they can enhance their mitochondrial health.
You know, the title of this lecture is A Lecture of Happiness.
I love it.
However, we can put this title as H and M. You know, like those the clothing company. Happiness and mitochondria.
Yeah.
Guys, can I I don't even have the words of gratitude to Dr. Winters on your behalf. Don't you agree that we got a whole lot more than we bargained for?
And I'm curious, because a few of you here have heard me speak a few times, so I apologize if this was repeat information for you, but I don't know, my brain always takes it in. Look at you, baby.
Oh yeah, she just came in and she was crawling on my legs and she's like, get me, I need some love.
Get me up here. I love it.
I need some love.
Well, I appreciate everyone being with me this late evening. Some of you snowier, colder than others. It's wonderful to see some faces that I've seen names on Facebook, and great to be with you, Sveta. Thank you for bringing me into your mix.
Is there any possibility, not tomorrow, but can we continue, please, the series?
Always.
Can we please continue the series?
I would love to see, because I'm sure, I know that you were recording, you'll have other people listen. So if there's any bubbled up.
It's going to be posted. You're going to have the recording, and I'm going to post it on my YouTube channel. It is Svetlana Silverman YouTube channel. It's all available. And, but the thing is, Dr. Winters, I'm going to see in Scottsdale, and the vegan meal is on me.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. We'll have a great time. It's going to be
we're going to have an amazing time.
Endocrine disruption. So it's going to be a hot topic for all of us. Maybe we'll come and do another follow-up from that conference.
Absolutely. Amen to this. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much. Nasha, I love you. You're absolutely amazing.
I adore you, my little Russian.
It's past your bedtime.
It almost, I'm about 1 minute past now. I'm totally good.
Good night to all of you guys. And whoever is in Edmonton, we will follow up with another session on Sunday at a beautiful vegan, beautiful Sweet Pea Cafe. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks everybody.
So incredible.
Thank you. Good to see you all.